What is going on, investors? Back again. Time to take a look at Ford Motor Company, ticker symbol F. They just reported earnings right after the bell. They've actually had a last few months. This stock's actually been melting up kind of nicely. During the regular session, obviously you see here the stock market was just way off today. Big sell-off today. Big sell-off yesterday as well. Ford Motor not being immune to it. But you see in the after hours after they reported earnings, things are pretty nice. We're up about 4.5% in the after hours, particularly on pretty strong revenue, strong, they said a robust Q3 report performance, and I'd have to agree. Everything looks pretty good. When we jump into the numbers here in a second, we'll take a look at that, and then finally we'll jump into the stock chart. There's just one really interesting thing happening with the stock chart as well. So let's jump right into the numbers here. We've got our third quarter here. That's our quarter we just announced today. They do it 19/20. So a lot of companies, you just got to take your time with these things, because a lot of companies will put 19 and 20 here. And so you just want to always make sure, they do the most current quarter in bold. So that's just something that you want to keep in mind, because if you read it this way, revenues actually went down, whereas they actually went up for the automotive segment in the last three quarters. And then we've got our 9-month here, same deal here. So quarter was strong, actually. It was strong year over year. And you see for the 9 months, we went from 107 down to 80, call it 83. So last quarter, Q2, Q1, obviously with the health thing going on, things haven't been very good for Ford, but we're actually seeing a third quarter that is now back to growth. So if you think fourth quarter will be like that, and then you go into 2021, it could be some really positive momentum behind this stock. Ford credit down a little bit, and overall revenues, we went from about 37 up to about 37 and a half. That's really strong for the quarter. Again, 9 months includes a little bit more of like shutdowns and things like that. Now we might roll back into that, and that's something that you want to keep in mind as we move through this and pretty much all the earnings that we're taking a look at here over the next few months. Cost of sales, we spent 31 to make 34. And that's actually appears to be favorable to the previous period. I know Ford is moving more to a mix of their commercial vehicles, their pickup trucks, their Mustangs. They're really popular cars. They phased out a lot of their quote unquote more unpopular, primarily sedans here in the United States. Don't sell nearly as well as the SUVs and the trucks, and those tend to have a little bit higher margins. We actually see that here since we had our revenue go up a little bit by about 800 million, but our cost of sales actually went down a little bit. So that's a positive. If that trend continues, that would be good as well. Selling and general administrative expenses actually went down. Again, our revenue went up. Our cost of sales went down. That's good. Our selling general administrative costs went down. That is good. For credit interest also went down. That's a positive as well. Everything looking pretty darn good for me. And so we get to an operating income. In the previous period, we lost $261 million. Take a look at this. We earned $2.3 billion in the quarter off $37 billion worth of revenue, which again looks like an incredibly low margin business. The automotive business typically is. It's just a difficult business. There's so many moving parts, so to speak, and literally it's just a business that it's hard to squeeze out. Unlike maybe like a Tesla, which runs at, I think, at a closer to a 20% operating margin. This company is, in the single digits, it appears. So things are really good. $2.3 billion for the quarter. Take a look. We lost $2 billion for the last 9 months. So it's an absolutely phenomenal quarter. Now, they've got some other stuff going on here, some other income, some interest, some, there's other stuff going on here. The net income, though, is very comparable. Okay, so the net income is looking, when you look at it on this full view, they've got this big other income here. So for the 9 months, we've actually earned $1.5 billion from the net income side, but from an operating perspective, we lost about $2. I personally would pay more attention to this operating income, since this is telling you like the health of the business itself. All this other income taxes, things like that may or may not be recurring. So All things being considered, this was a phenomenal quarter, and I can totally see why this stock is up 4% in the after hours off the heels of an absolutely disastrous day on the stock market. So moving down through the balance sheet, let's see how well capitalized this company is. They're probably not necessarily out of the woods in terms of everything that's going on with the health situation. Nobody is, I guess, at this point, but we'll see what happens. So we've got cash and marketable securities. We're up at 44 billion and change here. That's way over, not way over, but it is a considerable increase over where we were at the beginning of the year. We're going to assume that they probably issued some long-term debt. So we've got some other long-term debt here. That's not very much. We've got some automotive long-term debt ticked up a little bit. Here, we see here actually 13 to 22. So that's where some of that cash probably flowed into. But everything else looks really solid from the balance sheet. Now, I'm going to zoom up. They actually lead with, just like Snapchat and Amazon, they led with a cash flow statement. So we pull down this net income number that we made. We made 1.5. It's for the 9 months, actually. So they give you a 9-month view here. Not the 3-month view was actually even better than this. And so we can see here solid cash flows, $19 billion in cash. Compared to about $15 billion in the previous period. Let's take a look at what they're doing from the debt financing. So we proceeds from issuance of long-term debt. We issued 35 in the previous period. We issued, boom, 54 in this period, but take a look here, principal payments. So they're really just doing kind of like a tap dance refinance here. So they refinanced here. That's what appears here. Looks like we refinanced, or at least, borrowed some more debt to pay off some other debt. And that's typically what a lot of these companies are doing that have a significant amount of debt on their balance sheet. They're really doing a lot of refinancing right now with rates where they are. That is, in my opinion, a good idea and something you do want to see these companies doing. Now, moving over the stock chart, I remember I'm on a daily view here. Can't remember when we looked at this stock. It was probably in the last quarter, so it was about 3 months ago. This stock was probably in the 7s, maybe even the 6s. It's made a nice move up here into the $8 range. You see here, this was 10-2, so October 2nd, all the way up into where we're at today, which is like the 28th, I believe. So we've made a nice move just in this last month from, we were at the low to mid 6s on this stock, and now we're in the $8 range. We're actually right here. You see this right where my cursor is. We're actually here. The stock had kind of actually broke trend. So what I did is I put a trend line in here. We kind of started this uptrend here, and this stock broke trend, and that's usually a bad sign, but they just reported earnings, and so we're back up here. And so the critical thing that I want you to pay attention to if you want to buy Ford shares is, so we're right here at this line. So I'll draw that line in there so it's easy to see. So what happens is now this trend line should be some kind of resistance. It's not going to be like a big line in the sand, but it should be a little bit of resistance. So I could see Ford coming up into this line into the next day or two. Again, it's only about 10-15 cents where we're at. Now, what would be a very bullish thing is if we got above this trend and closed, we had a big green candle that closed up here, and then maybe even the following day closed up even higher. I would say that this trend is probably going to resume, at least for the short term. Now, what could also happen is we come up into this trend, and it could be right here, right at 804, 805, 810, somewhere in there, and then we get rejected and we come back down into this level. So if you're looking for a lower level to come buy in here with Ford stock, the 760, the 750, somewhere in this range, in this candle cluster. I think even more exciting for me would be the tops of these candles right here. So we made a top here. We made a top here. We made a top here. And then once we broke through this top, the stock really had a nice move. It went from about $7.37 up to $8 a share. And so if we can come back to the $7.40, you could bump it up even maybe to $7.50 range. That would be an interesting spot to buy this stock. But, if you got a really long-term perspective on Ford and you see next year, 2021, maybe being a little bit better. I know it's hard to see right now. We've got rising cases and everybody's shutting down and there's just some bad stuff going on. Well, if you can look past all that and say, look, this time next year, all that's going to be in our rearview mirror. Well, look, Ford stock is probably undervalued in my opinion and probably on its way to have some more good quarters ahead. So Ford stock doing pretty nice. Buck the trend of the negative markets in the regular session, reported earnings, and had a really, really strong performance in the after hours. So that's Ford for you. We'll be back again soon with more videos. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck with your investments.